The stars murmured of forgotten ages, of empires that rose in brilliance and crumbled into dust long before humanity ever lifted its eyes to the heavens. Across the galaxy, countless species thrived, each carrying its own chronicles, its own wars, and its own legends. Yet one tale stood apart, whispered in hidden halls and buried within neglected archives, the tale of humans. A race so fierce, so relentless in their pursuit of conquest, that the elder civilizations had erased all trace of their existence. Some whispered they had consumed themselves in a final apocalyptic conflict. Others believed they had escaped beyond the rim of known space, disappearing into the abyss. Still, their shadow lingered, a spectral reminder of where unchecked ambition could lead. For centuries the legend dimmed into obscurity, the mighty empires dismissing it as nothing more than myth, a caution spun to terrify young civilizations. Surely, if such beings had ever walked the stars, they were long since erased. That belief endured until the day the fleet appeared. The Dominion of Raal had stood unchallenged for millennia, their empire sprawling across hundreds of star systems, their warships unmatched, their science ages ahead of any rival. So when their deep space arrays registered an anomaly at the far edge of their domain, they assumed it nothing more than a derelict colony vessel, or perhaps marauders foolish enough to trespass. Confident, they dispatched a lone dreadnought, anticipating an effortless slaughter. The crew of the Vash even laughed when the sensors revealed the crude, outdated vessel before them. Vessels of rough-forged metal emerged, built for ruthless function rather than grace. They were relics, scarred monuments of forgotten wars, their hulls bearing wounds from uncounted battles. The Vial hailed them with the arrogance of a race that had never tasted fear. The reply came in a tongue the Dominion had stricken from record ages ago. "We are humanity. Surrender or be destroyed." Admiral Vakos sneered, "Impossible. Humans were legend extinct." Yet as his scanners dissected the advancing fleet, unease coiled in his chest. The ships, ancient though they seemed, moved with deadly coordination. Weapons hummed, formations perfect. He smothered his doubt. The Raal had broken countless challengers before. With a flick of his hand, he ordered their destruction. That command sealed his fate. The human craft surged forward, accelerating beyond reason, twisting through plasma fire like phantoms. Their weapons, primitive by Dominion measure, should have been worthless, but they were not. The first warship collapsed in seconds, its shields shredded by a storm of kinetic slugs. Another burst apart as a missile, archaic yet merciless, struck its core. The dreadnought, the Dominion's pride, barely screamed a warning before its bridge was ripped open by Raal fire. In less than an hour, it was over. Humanity had not lost a single vessel. Words spread like flame in dry fields. The impossible was truth. The myths lived. The monsters had returned. And they were advancing. The Dominion panicked. They sent more ships, greater fleets, whole armadas, and it made no difference. The humans fought like fiends, wielding a savagery and brilliance that defied reason. Their maneuvers baffled the Dominion, strategies born from a history soaked in endless wars. They sought no truce, asked for no terms. They came for vengeance, for crimes buried in forgotten time, for the sins of the galaxy that had once tried to erase them. As stars burned and worlds quaked, a single message echoed across the void, carved into the ruins of every Dominion force that dared resist. Humanity has returned. The Dominion of Raal, once unrivaled masters of the stars, now drowned in a sensation they had never known: fear. From every frontier came grim reports, each more dire than the last. Fleets obliterated, colonies reduced to dust. Their once unchallenged rule collapsing beneath the unyielding assault of an enemy long dismissed as myth. At the Dominion's heart, Supreme Chancellor Vakos stood within the Grand War Chamber, ringed by his highest commanders. Holograms shimmered around them, each replaying the same nightmare: human warships striking like shades, leaving nothing but annihilation in their wake. This cannot be. Admiral Tannic hissed, mandibles clattering with rage. "They are relics. Their ships are crude, their weapons obsolete. How are they winning?" Vakos turned to his intelligence chief, Sane, a pale-skinned Varel whose trembling hands betrayed her terror. "What do we know?" he demanded. Sane faltered. "Little. Records of the humans were purged long ago. What scraps remain mark them as relentless, warlike. But this," she motioned at the devastation surrounding them, "this is beyond anything we could have foreseen." A general's voice broke the silence. Perhaps they were never gone. Perhaps they were waiting, watching, preparing for this very moment. The word sent a chill through the room, the idea that humanity had not vanished but had instead been lurking in the void building there. Strength was more terrifying than any war machine. Enough speculation. Vakos snapped. "How do we stop them?" Silence, because no one had an answer. The war was unlike anything the Dominion had ever faced. They had fought countless enemies before, rebellious plats, rival empires, pirate factions, but those foes had played by the Samuels, following the same unspoken loss-off engagement the humans did not. They fought without honor, striking without warning. They refused to negotiate, refused to acknowledge surrender. They targeted the Dominion's supply lines, their shipyards, their fuel reserves. They were waging total war, something the Dominion had never encountered, and worst of all, they seemed to be getting stronger. The first human fleet had been small, but new warships were appearing every day. Where were they coming from? How had they built so many ships in secret? The Dominion's spies had no answers, and fatally deepened the terror. And then humanity did something truly horrifying. They took their first planet. The Dominion had assumed that humans were nothing more than raiders striking quickly before vanishing, but when the industrial world of Chorus 99 fell, it became clear humanity wasn't just here for revenge. They were here to conquer. Survivors from the planet told stories of human soldiers unlike any the Dominion had seen. They fought in exosuits, moved like shadows, and never left a single Dominion soldier alive. The cities of Chorus 9 burned for weeks, and when the fires died, the human flag was raised over the ruins. A new empire was rising, and the galaxy will never be the same. Panic spread like wildfire through the Dominion. Chorus 9 was the first world to fall, but it would not be the last. Reports flooded in. Human fleets were striking deep into Dominion space, taking planets with terrifying efficiency. Worlds that had stood under the Dominion's rule for centuries now burned with human fire. Supreme Chancellor V could no longer afford to ignore the truth. Humanity wasn't just winning, they were dismantling the Dominion. Piece by piece, he called for an emergency meeting of the High Council, a gathering of the most powerful beings in the Empire. The council chamber, usually a place of control and order, was now filled with fear and desperation. "We must deploy our Omega-class warships," Admiral Tor's neck argued. "Their fleet is powerful, but they cannot match the raw might of our capital ships. We've already sent Omega-class ships." Sign countered, her voice trembling. Where destroyed. Murmurs of disbelief rippled throughout their room. How Vakos growled. Seven took a deep breath. "We've underestimated them. Their ships may be old, but their technology has evolved in ways we never anticipated. Their weapons bypass our shielding systems. Their tactics aren't like anything we've faced." "What do they want?" one of the council members stended. Seelin hesitated before respondents. Then the room erupted in shouts. "This is madness. We are the Dominion. Negotiate with them. Surely they can be reasoned with. No, they will not stop until we are extinct." Vakos raised a hand, silencing them. His reptilian eyes gleamed with fury. "If it is vengeance they seek, then we will show them why the Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. We will burn their world, shunt them to the last soldier." But even as he spoke, the words felt hollow. He knew the truth. The Dominion had always won because they had always been stronger. But for the first time they were facing an enemy that wasn't afraid for humanity. This war was not about conquest or power. It was something deeper, something more terrifying. It was personal, and deep in the void beyond their arches of known space, a new fleet was assembling. Humanity had returned, and they were just getting started. The Dominion's war machine roared to life. Across The Empire shipyards worked without rest, churning out warships faster than ever before recruitment centers overflowed as soldiers were pressed into service, their minds filled with propaganda about the Terran invadership. Dominion had faced rebellions, rogue fleets and rival empires before, but never an enemy like this, and still the humans advanced. The war was not fought in even terms. The Dominion believed in control and discipline, in strategies that had worked for millennia. The humans fought with chows, with unpredictability, with an unrelenting brutality that shattered every doctrine. The Dominion had built its empire upon a single human fleet could appear out of nowhere, hit a supply convoy, and disappear before the Dominion even had time to react. Their ships were not just fast, they moved like predators, striking vital targets with precision. They didn't waste time in drawn-out engagements. They struck where it hurt most, and then came the ground war. One, the Dominion lost Chorus 9. They assumed it was an anomaly when they lost Kethro 6 and Raal Prime in the same week. They realized it was a pattern. Human soldiers were unlike anything the Dominion had ever encountered. The Vahal, like many species in the galaxy, relied on advanced hadrons and automated warfare to minimize their own casualties. Their soldiers were commanders guiding machines to fight on the earth. But humans, they were different. They fought in the mud, in the ruins, in the streets. They didn't rely on machinists to fight for them. They were the weapons. Dominion troops accustomed to clean and calculated warfare, where horrified human soldiers did not break when outnumbered. They did not surrender when surrounded. They fought with an intensity that defied reason, with tactics that made no sense until they worked. The worst were the Terran shock troopers. They didn't just kill Dominion soldiers, they hunted them. They adapted, learned, and exploited weaknesses faster than any enemy the Dominion had faced. A single Dominion battalion could be wiped out in a night by a handful of human operatives. Their weapons, primitive by Dominion standards, fired kinetic projectiles that tore through armor like paper. They fought without mercy, and that terrified the Dominion more than anything. The humans weren't just conquering planets, they were taking them back. The Dominion's leadership scrambled to understand why they were the dominant force in the galaxy. They had ruled unchallenged for centuries. What had they done to desert observe this war? Then they found the truth deep in the restricted archives of the Dominion, buried under centuries of classified information. Supreme Chancellor Vos uncovered a dark secret. The humans had not vanished from history. They had been erased long ago, before the Dominion had risen to power their ancestors had encountered humanity, a young ambitious race expanding rapidly, forging alliances and mastering warfare faster than any species before them. They were a threat not because they were evil, but because they were relentless. And so the Dominion's forebears had made a decision. They had committed genocide. They had exterminated human worlds, burned colonies to the ground, and wiped every record off their existence. They had hunted the survivors to the edges of the galaxy, believing they had destroyed them all, but they hadn't. Somehow humanity had served, and now, after centuries in the shadows, they had returned, not as conquerors but as executioners. Their realization struck Supreme Chancellor Vos like a death. No, the war wasn't a war. It was a reckoning. The humans weren't here to expand, to conquer, or to dominate. They were here to settle an ancient debt, one written in blood and fire, one that the Dominion had forgotten but humanity had never forgiven. Vaka stood in the silent chamber, staring at ancient records, at the HDs, off-burning human cities, at the cold, calculated extermination of an entire species. The faces of the V leaders from centuries past looked down at him, their decisions sealing the fate of their descendants. The humans had every right to hate them, and yet hate wasn't fueled for what the humans felt. Hate was emotional. Hate could be reasoned with. This was something else. This was retribution. A sudden chime broke the heavy silence. An emergency transmission flicked to life in the war chamber. Thephis of Admiral Tannic appeared, his expression a mask of disbelief and barely restrained panic. There, here Hesed voice Holovaka Stratift, where Tannic swallowed Huron ver al Prima. Hush fell over the room. Impossible. The humans were still on theater colonies. They shouldn't have been able to reach the Dominions. capital so quickly, but they had. A second alarm blurred tactical maps filled the warchamber, showing red markers descending from the void like vengeful race-human warships larger and deadlier than the Dominion had anticipated. Had be past the outer defenses complete. Ilithi weren't here to fight Another battle, they were here to enthure the skies over Vaal Prime, tornado fire as the first human dropships descended. Through the atmosphere anti-air defenses roared to life, but it was already too late. The humans had planned this assault with the precision of a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Stealthcraft had already infiltrated the planet's orbital stations, taking control of defense platforms and turning them against their own fleet. Dominion warships were exploding in low orbit, raining molten debris onto their own cities on the ground. Panic erupted. Citizens flooded the streets, watching in horror as their once invincible empire collapsed before their eyes. The Dominion's own soldiers, Thasuhu, had been raised to believe in their species' superiority, now trembled as human strike teams emerged from the smoke. They fought like demons the Dominion had never seen. Warfare like this, relentless, brutal, efficient. Humans didn't waste time with theatrics. They struck vital infrastructure, first crippling power grids, communications, and military coordination. Within hours, entire districts were plunged into darkness. Vakos stood in his war room watching the nightmare unfold. His admirals screamed at one another, issuing desperate, conflicting orders. It did matter. The Dominion was losing. No, humanity had already won. He had one last option: prepare the planetary annihilation protocol. He said, his voice calm. The room froze. Even his most loyal General Secoil Chancellor Sealan whispered that we'll kill billions our own people if we cannot have this world. Neither will they, Vako said coldly. But before the order could be given, the doors to the war chamber burst open. A figure stepped inside, flanked Bitwo human soldiers clad in jet black armor. Vakos recognized him instantly. Had seen the man's face before, not in person, but in the old buried archives of the last survivors, a descendant of the massacred race, a human. The man walked forward, his helmet under one arm, his eyes filled with something worse than hatred, certainty. Velkos clenched his jaw. What do want the humans? Justice. Outside, the Dominion burned. Vel Prime fell in a single night. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled the galaxy with an iron grip. Its fleets unmatched, its power unquestioned. But in then, none of that mattered. Humanity had not come as conquerors or diplomats. They had come as executioners, delivering a long overdue sentence. The war did not end with negotiations or peace treaties. It ended with silence. By dawn, the Dominion High Command was gone. Supreme Chancellor was his admirals, his war ministers, all executed. The humans did not spare them, did not offer mercy, did not waste words. The judgment had been passed centuries ago. This was merely the sentence being carried out. Streets of Vaal Prime were idly quiet after the final battle. The towering spires of the Dominion's once great capital stood in ruin, smoke rising from shattered buildings. The banners off the Vaal, once a symbol of power, lay trampled in the dirt, and over Thetalis Tower, the flag of humanity flew across the galaxy. Every Dominion-controlled planet received the Sama transmission. A human commander stood before the camera, clad in dark battle-worn armor. His face was calm, his voice steady. There was no joy in his words, only finality. The Dominion is no more, he said. Your leaders are dead, your fleets are Ragoni, your empire has fallen. A heavy pause. For centuries, you ruled through fear, you erased our history, you tried to erase us, and the other Weston. He leaned forward, his gaze burning. Ginto Thelans, humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive, but we do understand justice. The screen flickered, showing images of surrendered Dominion soldiers being led away in chains. The humans had not wiped them out, not completely. Thasuhu had not resisted. Those who had no hand in the genocide would be spared, but they would never rule again. We do not seek to replace. The commander continued, we are not here to build an empire. We have reclaimed what was stolen from us, nothing more. The galaxy is free from Dominion tyranny. What happens next is up to you. The transmission ended, and with it an era. The Dominions collapsed, sent shock waves through the galaxy. Worlds that had been under its rule for centuries found themselves free for Thieversdom. Some rejoiced, others fell into Chow's rival species scrambled to fill power vacuum. But none dared challenge the humans, because now the galaxy knew the truth: humanity had deserved extinction.